So, this is kind of hard to write, but my therapist encouraged me to write down my thoughts, so here we are. My grandpa passed away recently from lung cancer. He was always kind of a quiet guy, never really talked much about his past, but he was always there for us. We all loved him, and his death hit my family pretty hard. My parents, my sister, and I had the task of cleaning out his house. Most of it was just old furniture, boxes, and random junk he collected over the years. But then we got to the basement. I always thought the basement was creepy. Even as a kid, I did not like going down there. It was damp, musty, and just really creepy, as most basements are. But we had to go through everything, so we started sorting through the boxes stacked along the walls. Most of them were full of old clothes, tools, and papers. But then my sister found this one box, tucked away in a corner, half hidden behind an old workbench. It was taped up and had a layer of dust on it like it hadn't been touched in years. When we opened it, we found something that none of us were expecting. Inside were stacks of old clothes, women's clothes mostly. Dresses, blouses, skirts, all neatly folded. And at the bottom of the box, there were these old driver's licenses. They were faded, but you could still make out the names and faces. All of them were women, and the dates of them, they were from the 1970s. My mom tried to brush this off, saying maybe he just found them or something, but something about it did not sit right with me. Why would he keep them? Why hide them? My dad suggested that we look up the names, just to see if we could find anything. It was more out of curiosity than anything, but what we found freaked us out even more. Every single one of those names was linked to a missing persons case. Women who disappeared in the 1970s. They were never found, and the cases went cold. My dad started to get really quiet after that, like he was trying to process it. But my mom kept saying there had to be some other explanation. She said maybe Grandpa had found the licenses and kept them to turn them in someday. But if that was the case, why didn't he? I tried to think back on anything Grandpa might have said or done that seemed off, but I couldn't come up with anything. He was always just Grandpa. But now I can't stop thinking about what we had found. I can't stop wondering if he had something to do with these women disappearing. I know that there's no concrete evidence. There's nothing that proves he did anything wrong necessarily. But it's all too weird to just ignore. And I can't shake this feeling that maybe the man I thought I knew wasn't who he really was. I thought about going to the police, but what would I even tell them? Hey, I found some old driver's license in my dead grandpa's basement, and I think he might have been involved in some missing persons case from 50 years ago. It sounds crazy, and there's nothing solid to back it up. But at the same time, I feel like I can't just forget about this. Those women's faces are burned into my mind now, and I keep thinking about their families, about how they never got closure. If Grandpa really did have something to do with their disappearances, shouldn't they know? But what if I'm wrong? What if it's all just a weird coincidence, and I end up tarnishing his memory for no reason? I don't know what to do. My parents are trying to move on, but I can tell it's eating at them too, even if they won't admit it. We haven't talked about it since that day, and I feel like it's this dark cloud hanging over all of us now. I guess I'm just posting this here to you because I don't know where else to turn. My therapist said it's better to write down what I'm feeling instead of trying to internalize it by myself. Has anyone else ever found something that made them question everything they thought they knew about someone they loved? How do you deal with that? Now, I'm not really sure how to start this, but I need to get it out because I'm freaking out and don't know what to think anymore. My wife and I just had our first child, a beautiful baby girl. We've been over the moon ever since she was born. It's been such a mix of emotions, you know. The exhaustion, the overwhelming love, the fear of screwing everything up. But mostly, we've just been really, really happy. A bit of background. My mother passed away a month before our daughter was born. It was extremely rough on me. I was very close with her, and losing her just before this huge change in my life was, I don't know, it was like a punch to the gut. I kept wishing she could have met her granddaughter. I think she would have loved her. Anyway, the weird stuff started the night we brought home our baby. We were exhausted, as you can imagine, but everything was fine. The baby was sleeping in her crib in her room, and we were finally catching some sleep ourselves when the baby monitor crackled to life. At first, I thought it was just the usual sounds. Maybe she was moving around, or just making those little noises babies make. But then we heard it. A voice, clear as day. "Hello, sweetie. I'm your grandmother." I shot up in my bed. My wife did too. We looked at each other like, "Did you just hear that?" I grabbed the monitor and stared at it, but the room was empty. It was just our baby, fast asleep. There was no one else in the room. We went in there, of course, to check. I half expected to find someone, or something, standing over her crib. But there was nothing. Just our daughter, still asleep, perfectly peaceful. We checked the whole house, every window and door, but everything was locked up tight. The next day, I tried to shrug it off. I told myself it was just one of those nights. Maybe some interference from another baby monitor nearby, or a weird glitch. My wife was more shaken up than I was, though. She kept saying that voice. It sounded just like my mother's. I did not want to believe that. I couldn't. It just seemed too impossible. But then it happened again. The next night, the same thing. We were asleep, and then the monitor crackled, and we heard that same voice. "Hello, sweetie. I'm your grandmother." Same tone, same words. I recorded it that time because I needed to know that I wasn't losing it. When I played it back, the hairs on my neck stood up. It was her voice, my mother's voice. I've heard that voice my whole life, and there was no mistaking it. My wife was white as a sheet when I showed her. We played it for my dad, my siblings, anyone who knew her. They all said the same thing. It was definitely her. We've heard it every night since. Always the same phrase, always the same voice. My mother was talking to our baby, just like she would have done if she were still alive. I don't know what to make of this. I'm terrified and weirdly calm at the same time. Like, part of me is scared out of my mind, because this isn't normal, right? People don't just come back to life after they die, even if it's just their voice. But another part of me feels comforted, knowing that she's here, watching over us, over my daughter. It gives me some peace, but I can't hide the fear that there's more to it. What if it isn't really her? What if it's something else? Something pretending to be her? I've read enough stories online to know that not everything that seems harmless really is. We're trying to figure out what to do next. My wife wants to talk to someone, maybe a priest or something. I'm just trying to keep it together, to not let my fears show, because I don't want to scare her more than she already is. So yeah, that's where we're at. And every night we hear her voice, and every night I go to bed hoping it'll stop, and dreading that it won't. I don't know what's going on, and I'm scared that I'll never get any real answers. But at least, for now, I know that my daughter isn't alone in that room. Every summer, our family gets together for a big pool party at my place. My wife and I have a decent-sized backyard with an in-ground pool, and since we're centrally located, it's become the go-to spot for these kind of gatherings. All the aunts, uncles, cousins, and their kids show up. It's always a good time. Lots of laughter, food, and the kids splashing around in the water. This year was no different, or so I thought. My little cousin Sam was the youngest of the bunch, only turning 3 a few months ago. He was an energetic kid, always running around and asking a million questions. But something strange happened with him yesterday. It started when he came up to me while everyone was swimming. He said, "Uncle Mike, there's a girl at the bottom of the pool." At first I thought he was just playing around. You know how kids are at that age. They have wild imaginations. But something in his voice made me pause. He wasn't laughing or smiling like usual. He looked serious. "What do you mean, buddy?" I asked him and crouched down to his level. "There's a girl down there," he said again, pointing to the deep end of the pool. "Her name is Lily." I tensed up when he said this. You see, my sister's daughter, Lily, had drowned 10 years ago. She was only 6 years old at the time. And it was a tragedy that broke our family, and we've never really talked about it since. Especially not around the younger kids like Sam, who wasn't even born when it happened. I tried to keep my cool and nonchalantly asked, "Who told you about Lily?" Sam just shrugged. "She told me her name," and just pointed at the pool water. I looked over. The water was clear and I could see everyone swimming and playing, but there was no one at the bottom. I did not want to scare him, so I told him he must have been mistaken and suggested that he go play with his cousins. He nodded and ran off. Later, when the kids were distracted, I pulled my sister aside and told her what Sam had said. Her face went white, and she looked like she was going to be sick. "Did anybody tell him about Lily?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, Mike, we don't talk about it. You know that." I could see she was visibly shaken, so I didn't push it. But I had to know more, so I discreetly asked a few other family members if they had ever mentioned Lily to Sam. Everyone said no. They all seemed just as confused as I was. I tried to logically explain to myself that maybe Sam overheard something or just made it up. But the weirdness did not end there. As the day went on, Sam kept avoiding the pool, which was odd since he usually loved the water. At one point, I saw him standing by the edge, staring down into the deep end with a troubled look on his face. I walked over to him and asked if he was okay. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes filled with something that I could only describe as fear. "She's still down there, Uncle Mike," and pointed at the water. I didn't know what to say. I glanced over at the pool again, but of course there was nothing there. The water was just water, clear, blue, and completely normal. But the way Sam said it, with such conviction, made me believe that he really believed it. The party ended around 6 p.m. that day. When Sam left, I saw him wave to the pool as if he was waving goodbye to someone. Later that night, after me and my wife had cleaned up the party, I noticed something. I was going to lock the back door, which led to the backyard and pool. As I was about to lock it, I noticed fresh, wet footprints leading from the pool and into our back door. I called up to my wife and asked her if she had taken a quick dip in the pool, but she said no, and she was already lying in bed. I cannot explain this part whatsoever. It wasn't any of my family members' footprints, as they had been gone for hours at that point. And the weirdest part of all, I woke up a couple of times in the middle of the night to splashing. It sounded like someone was jumping into our pool, but of course, when I got up to look out the window, the water was still and calm. Fall is coming up, and we are beginning to close up our pool for the year. Between Sam seeing Lily, the wet footprints, and the splashing at night, I honestly don't know what to think. I pray to God this is all just in my head, and nothing else. Hey, what's up guys, it's Spooky. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you survived. If you did not know, I have an Instagram. Follow me on there so we can connect. I also have a Patreon. On there you'll have direct access to me and can see the upcoming videos, polls, and soon-to-be exclusive stories only shared on there. If that's something that interests you, please consider joining. That's all I have for you guys tonight. Stay spooky and I'll see you in the next video.